Hey, so I'm here today in Hampstead Heath just to have a little wander around. It's 2nd of January, so New Year's just started. Got over yesterday's hangover and I thought I'd just come out this morning. It's about 11 o'clock now. I've been out for a couple of hours and just take some pictures and get back into the swing of things, I guess. Been having a little think about my sort of New Year's resolutions for photography and what it is that I want to do this year. So just trying to kind of hone those in, take some pictures and just enjoy myself for a day really. So I'll bring you guys along. So one of the key things I wanted to do with photography this year as a kind of New Year's resolution was really look at how I spend my money on photography. Like I think a lot of people who are into film cameras, it's easy to look at the thousands of different options available and want to buy all of them and own all of them. But actually owning 20 new cameras every year isn't going to help my photography, it isn't going to make my images better, and it's going to very quickly drain my wallet. So what I've decided to do this year is try and invest my money a little bit more sensibly, buy things that are practical and that are useful and that are going to actually help my photos and actually help my shooting experience. So this is a perfect example of what I'm shooting with here. I've got two different things that I've bought recently that I've really been enjoying using and they've actually been really helpful to me. First one is a new tripod, partly because I was using a friend's tripod before and he wanted it back. I was going to buy the exact same one because I quite liked it and it was easy to use, but what I actually went for was something smaller, something a bit more light, something more portable, and just a bit easier when I'm traveling. If I'm going elsewhere, I've always found carrying a tripod to be really cumbersome and really annoying, so now having a smaller, lighter one, it's a bit less of a bother for me. The second one, and it's something that I'm using in this image, I used another one earlier in the day, is I bought quite a lot of filters for a few of my different cameras. Filters are great because they're a really good way of kind of experimenting and molding the photo to how you want it to look in camera. It means that you have to do less in post, you have to play around less with your scan or your print. You can get it on the negative how you want it. So the one I have on the camera now is an orange filter. I also have a red filter. They're both really popular for black and white photography, and what they basically do is block certain wavelengths of light. So orange and red filters are really widely used, they're very, very common, because what they'll do is extend the contrast in the image. So in this photo where I'm pointed straight up at the sky, the blue is just starting to peek through the clouds, and I've got this nice kind of silhouette of the branches and the trees against it. It's going to really make it a bit more dynamic, a bit more exciting. That blue is going to become very dark against the white clouds, and in turn it's going to darken these trees a little bit. So we'll see how it comes out. So for this photo of the tree, I want to take two different exposures and do them in two different ways. So the first one I've got set up, I've metered pretty much for the kind of shadows on the tree, and it's coming in at 30th of a second at f11. And then I'm going to take a second exposure, I'm going to stop it down a little bit, but I'm going to put a red filter on the lens. So the idea for the red filter is I want one where you can see the kind of detail in the tree, and one where I'm going to increase the contrast with the red filter, wash the sky out a little bit more and make it more of a kind of silhouette of the shape of the branches. I've metered through my red filter. It takes 2 stops of light out, so I'm going to go from 30th at f11 to 30th at f5.6 and see which one comes out better. So another one of my New Year's resolutions for photography is to experiment a little bit more with the development process. I've been developing my own colour and black and white film for a while now, but I've not really pushed the limits of what I can do technically or kind of creatively with the process. So with this in mind, I've bought a new tank so I can develop 2 rolls of film at a time, just for convenience, but more importantly, I bought a new developer. Been using RB67 for my black and white up to now. Now I've bought one called Rodinal. And Rodinal is very popular for a process called stand development. And stand development is quite simple. You take a developer like Rodinal, Kodak's HC110 I think it's called, is popular as well, and you just dilute it very, very heavily. So with Rodinal, I'm going to go with 1 part of developer to 100 parts of water. And then what you do is develop for a very long time and without agitating in the way you would with normal development. And what this means is a few different things. It's very easy. It's called the lazy man's way of developing quite often, because you can just leave it. You don't need to agitate, you don't need to be there monitoring it. You can go away for an hour and come back. Supposedly it's also meant to give you increased sharpness or increased perception of sharpness in the image. It gives you this nice kind of tonality. The grain comes out in a certain way. The other thing is how it actually develops over that time. So the image I'm about to take, I'm going to meter for the shadows, and the reason is when you meter for the shadows and then stand develop, the first thing to develop is the highlights, and it's going to exhaust the developer in the highlights, and then over the rest of the process it's going to slowly develop the shadows. And I think the idea is you get more detail and more information on your negative in the shadows. It's not a process I've worked with that much. I've been kind of having a little read up about it, but I'm really keen to dive in and understand it a lot more. So it's how I'm going to develop this film, and hopefully we get some interesting results, and hopefully I can see how stand development is different to how I've been developing up to now. So all in all, I'm really happy with today. I got to have a think about my New Year's resolutions and what I want to achieve in 2020. I also got to dive in and start actually putting them into practice. So the stand development, it weren't perfect. I think the thing I talked about, kind of sharpness, is definitely true. These photos have a really kind of crisp, really sharp, really nice feel to them that is different to how I normally develop in RB11. The only issue I had is something to do with mixing the chemicals, or something to do with how I agitated. The chemicals have probably settled a little bit to the bottom of the tank, and I've got a little bit of inconsistencies along the bottom of the negatives. But that's fine. It's part of the learning curve. It's part of why I wanted to dive into development a bit more and into the technicalities of it. But this process is definitely something I'm going to keep doing. It's great for if you want to develop one roll of film but have it shot at different ISOs, because it's over such a long period of time. I developed for 1 hour for this roll. If you were to take something like HP5 and you want to shoot some of the shots at 400, some at 800, some at 1600, because you're developing for such a long time, little inconsistencies in time are much less of a problem. It also means if you want to take 2 different film stocks, one that you'd normally develop at say 11 minutes, one at 13, you can develop them both at an hour, and really that margin of error becomes a lot smaller. So it's really convenient, it's really easy, it's a good technique to, I guess, have in the pocket to be able to use. And I'm going to keep delving in more and trying to really nail it down. And I'll keep you guys updated, so if you're interested in learning more about that or hearing what I have to say about other things, feel free to subscribe and let me know what you're aiming for in 2020, what it is that you really want to achieve with your photography. Thanks.